Hey, welcome to another Valley Forged. I am so absolutely lucky. I'm sitting here going to debate and talk about such amazing lasers. I mean, we are so lucky to have this choice. I mean, just a couple of years ago, we're looking at 10-watt lasers. They can't do nearly as much as what we have now. And we have the all-in-ones where you could just set it up. You have to go buying the air assist and the honeycomb bed and the enclosure and putting it all together and all these sorts of things. We now have these real diode lasers that could do real work and run a small business with. It is phenomenal. So I am going to do a competition, which you won't see very often on YouTube because, and as they should be, most creators are afraid of pissing off the manufacturers. I mean, it's the real deal. We want to keep working with everybody. And in this particular case, xTool said they were down with a competition between the Roly LaserMatic, the S1, and the WeCreat Vision. Now, right away, I am going to say I don't recommend the WeCreat Vision. So we could just kind of put that out of the way. I think before the S1 was created, there was kind of this niche where it was really nice for home, and it made a lot of sense because it was so easy to use. It had the templates, all this sort of thing. The software is easier, the light burn. But now that the S1 is here, XCS is really easy, and it kind of has the same deal with the interface and easy to use. It's great for the home, has all the safety features. So, and it's more powerful. Either way, you can get the 40 watt. In every way, pretty much it's just better than the WeCreat, in my opinion, having used both machines. That doesn't mean at some point the WeCreat won't create another machine and it will be, up here with these or better. We don't know. But as things stand right now, I'm going to try and give you the most honest opinion, and I'm going to go through details of why I feel one way or the other about all these two lasers now that we've kind of separated the WeCreat here. I'm just going to, since, I just got the S1 and I've been using the Roly and it's been my staple laser for a while. I have the MK2 30 watt, 10 watt. What I have here is the 20 watt xTool. Now, I recommended in the last video, I said, if you're going to get the 20 watt, just get the 40. So I'm mostly going to be talking about from the 40 watt point of view because I feel like that's really the only way to get it. I told xTool they should send me the 40 watt because it makes it a lot easier to say it's better, given, that it has more power than the 30 watt Roly. And it does make a difference. I'm going to start right off the bat and say power. That extra 10 watts, in my opinion, makes just a little bit of difference because of cutting 6mm hardwood plywood. Say you've got walnut ply, you've got sapele ply, things like that. I get mine from Craft Closet. The 30 watt cuts it out fine. And, I'm making the Lord's Prayer crosses and whatnot. It cuts it out. I've made, 50 of them, more than that by now. And they turn out great. But sometimes when it's like a little over 6mm, it can be a little difficult. Or it has a different kind of backing. Maybe it's the one-sided walnut and the backside has some sort of wood that's just a little more difficult to cut through. I find that I would love to have an extra 10-15% of power just to make sure, because the last thing you ever want to do is not cut all the way through. And when you're talking about a 40-minute cut, you don't want to do it twice. So, having that extra little wattage is important. Now, that does come with a cost, literally. I mean, you look at the difference between the prices, you're probably talking what, $400 to $600 difference. So, I mean, it is some money. So you're going to listen to the rest of what I have to say and see if it is worth it for you for what you are going to make. I'm am going to come from my personal experience having used both machines. The thing that right away I noticed made the biggest difference to me is the fan is not on when the machine is running. And I've said this so many times, but the machine is on right now in the background. You cannot hear it at all because it doesn't make any noise. If I had the Roly LaserMatic on right back there, it would be making a noise. I'd have to turn it off for the video. And it does get annoying. And so you just don't want to have it on when you're not working on it. Now, that will matter more or less to different people, but it does matter to me. The dimensions is the next thing I'd like to get into. I'll show you a picture. I really love that I just buy my wood and it fits right into the honeycomb bed. That is a blessing. Now, I know Roly is coming out with a XW, a bigger machine, and that's great, but I'm actually comparing it to what's available right now and the two that I have used. And I got to say, this bed is so much easier to work with when it comes to the size for the wood that I buy. I have to cut off the ends of the wood to work in my Roly that I don't have to do with the xTool. Looks. I mean, I personally like the look of the Roly better, but that's because I'm a business that does it with, this in mind. You see my background. It's not beautiful. But if you have a beautiful office or you want to put this in your house, the xTool is hands down better looking. I'm going to say this later on, but I compare it kind of Apple to PC in a way. Apple, Android, whatever. I feel like it just has a sleek, beautiful look to it, and it fits really nice in a beautiful setting. Whereas the Roly LaserMatic probably, it's gorgeous to me, but it's not as elegant, I would say. But you can see both machines. You can decide for yourself. But it is a matter of opinion. But I do, It is easier to remove the nozzle, the module. Now, I end up cleaning mine quite a bit either way. I just want to make sure that the lens is clean, and it is very easy to put on and take off the module for cleaning or to switch it out for whatever you want to do. I think that's an amazing design. With the Roly, it is more difficult. You got like 4 things to take off, and it's quite a bit more. It's not difficult, and you don't do it that often, but it's something. The autofocus. The autofocus is great. It's the first time I actually use autofocus. I have had them on CO2 lasers. I've had them on multiple diode lasers, and I have never used it. I've always taken it off. I've always just not using it. Whatever I've got to do, it's just a pain in the butt. This autofocus works really nice. It's very close to where the beam is, so it doesn't have to be so offset, and it works really well with XCS. With Lightburn, it works fine, but you have to remember to do it, and that I'll get into with the negatives. Actually, I'll just say right now, and I'm going to be doing a video more on the Lightburn side and comparing it to XCS in the next episode, but because you have the panels in Lightburn and you have to remember to do it, it's not going to remind you to autofocus. And it's just not right. I don't know. For whatever reason, it's easy to forget for me in Lightburn. Whereas in XCS, I don't forget to do the focus. And, but I do really like the autofocus. Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi, way better, hands down, super easy to use. Type in your password to your Wi-Fi. This is the way all Wi-Fi should work. Wonderful. Again, the first Wi-Fi that I would consider using in a diode laser. It already has a Z-axis, so you can use that, and that meaning you can lower or raise the module in the software, so that if you want to say, hey, do something pretty deep, that you can move it down just a little bit so that the focus will move down. you know, it's, I don't want to get into that in this video, but it does help with making deeper cuts or different things. And they have other uses for that, like doing concave bowls and stuff like that. The more I've looked into that, I think it's just not even worth it, but you can do it. Expandability. I guess we can get right into that from that. You know, it has a conveyor belt. It has several other things that you can get that you can't get with the Roly LaserMatic. I've heard rumors that they're making such a thing or whatnot. I'm not into it. I don't really. I would, if you're going to buy this so that you can get a conveyor belt, I strongly suggest you go watch some videos on exactly everything that entails of using that conveyor belt to make sure that that's something that you are actually going to use. And hopefully you can find somebody out there who will give you an honest review of using that part. I've never used it. It's not my kind of thing. If I wanted a bigger laser, I would just get a bigger laser. But it does have that ability, and if you look into it and that's what you want, then it's good to have. And there, I am going to miss some things because, you know, the depth of this machine also, and the ability to put, it does have a riser thing that you can get for it. You know, with the Roly, it has the plate out in the bottom that you can take off. They both have, and it does have an expander as well for raising it, for doing, say, 40-ounce tumblers or something like that. So you can compare the prices on that. I believe that it's much cheaper to do on the Roly and this particular thing. But they both do have that ability. But I just wanted to say it is a little bit more expandable, I would say. You do have a vast amount of people who have bought xTool things. So you are going to have a lot of people that you can talk to get tips, tricks, people who have already done it. People have made stuff on XCS, so it's already ready. And I do call that a benefit. It can also be a negative, which I'll get into, but there is the benefit of having so many users. So I've mentioned a lot of things. I mean, when you put it down on paper, there is a lot of reasons the S1 is superior. Some of the negatives that come to mind, it is xTool. I mean, it's this big corporate thing. Everywhere you go, there's commercials. I'm not going to be emailing back and forth with the owner of xTool, and they're not going to be listening to me personally. Whereas, you know, with Roly, that it is much more of a smaller, faster, meaner company that I feel like they can hear me easier because they're smaller, right? So you can kind of think about these two things and how you support either. Two wonderful machines, though. I have to say that again, wonderful. You could not go wrong with either one. I want to say that kind of in the middle here. I'm also going to mention, actually they asked me to mention it, is that they're doing a trade-in deal. So go into the description and you can see you can get money back or whatever, and you can go into that. But there is a way, if you're an xTool customer, to lower your price. So check that out. Another one of the negatives is the price. It is quite a bit more expensive. Even if you were just talking about the 20 watt versus the 30 watt Roly, it is going to be more expensive. That is typical with xTool. They generally do cost a premium. But if you were to go and sell your machine or pass it on later on, people are probably going to pay a little bit more because of that brand recognition, and they do realize that it is a value. So there is that. It doesn't have a 10 watt switch. I mean, you get the 40 watt module, you got 40 watts. Now for me, that's fine because I never use the 10 watt switch on my Roly. I have the 3010, but if you're going to be doing fine engraving, that's probably going to be a lot better. That you have that ability to switch to the 10 watts, and it's probably going to give you a lot better engrave. I don't have the 40 watt xTool, so I'm not able to do to show one way or the other, but it does stand to reason, doesn't it? The size. This thing is huge, and the footprint is much bigger than on the Roly LaserMatic. And when it sits on my table, I have a lot less room to put other things. It looks nice. And it's sleek, but it is big and it is heavy. Some of the things about the Roly LaserMatic that I like better. I like the enclosure better. I like being able to see what's going on in the laser at all times. I think it stays cleaner. I use the heck out of this Roly LaserMatic. I mean, I have made $20,000 plus worth of projects that I am selling, and it looks pretty close to the exact same way it did when I got it. And that is amazing. Now, after using the xTool for a little while, I see a lot of dirt, and I actually have seen this before on other channels. The plastic for the xTool does seem to get dirty pretty easily. It's easy to clean. I don't know how it's going to work over time as far as staying clean, but it does seem to attract dirt and dust a little bit more. And I personally like the orange, obviously, more than I like the green. But as I've stated before, the green and black looks really nice in, say, a higher end office or a home. I already mentioned the 30 versus 10 watt, so it is nice to be able to have that for engraving. Light burn. This is larger, bigger thing than you might think. This is a dedicated light burn machine. It is, it already came with everything. I just plugged it in and it worked perfectly with what was sent in Lightburn. I didn't have to do anything. It was set up better than I've ever set up my own machine ever. It just worked so nicely. And I do like to work in Lightburn. I design in Lightburn. And I think that is one thing over XCS. You're going to have a lot more functionality. XCS seems really beginner friendly. I was able to make, here, I'll show you, this is a very, very intricate layered project that you don't want to go messing up on. And I made this is like my second project, and I'll show you more about it in the next episode when it's all finished. But I just wanted to mention that I was easily able to make a large project without any mistakes. And if it didn't cut all the way through, you could hit the button and it will just do it again. Say you got your settings wrong. And it was perfect in XCS. So I did like XCS. But you can tell already just by looking at it that Lightburn is just going to be way better as an all-in-one package that you can do so much more on. And I can see how with XCS you can do your design in something like Illustrator or something like that and just bring it into XCS. You're going to be fine. But I personally just like doing all of my things in one program, which is Lightburn. And yes, you can use Lightburn just fine with the xTool, but it's not quite the same. It feels like there's just some things missing and some things are just a little harder to use. And again, with the autofocus, I forget the dimensions that it showed to set up didn't seem to be quite right. Now, I noticed in the Clack Shack video, he mentioned that the auto air assist wasn't working exactly right. For the xTool, they have fixed that. It is working great now. I was able to turn a layer on in Lightburn and turn the air off, and then with the next layer have it on, and that worked great. So there's a lot of functions that are working great in Lightburn, but I just feel like I didn't feel super comfortable working in Lightburn that I usually do, but I did feel very comfortable in XCS. So I think that if you are looking to get the xTool, wanting to work in XCS, I think is something you would want to do. It just feels like it's made for it, because it is, and it works nice. But I'm a Lightburn guy. So once again, it is kind of like Apple and Android, right? If you're used to working in Apple, then it's kind of hard to switch to an Android and vice versa. The fixed honeycomb bed. That is huge. And I mentioned in the last video, I think that's a missed opportunity from xTool. It really would have made a big difference to be able to have that fixed spot. I like the honeycomb bed. I like the fact that it has the rubber feet. I like that there's area for the smoke to come out underneath. It wasn't difficult. It hasn't been a problem, but every time I got to make sure that it's in the exact same spot. It could easily move, things like that. It only takes like a tiny little movement that you can't depend on it being there. So I would imagine there's plenty of ways where you could fix it and have it still removable. I'm sure you could make that happen. So it's just something to think about. And 95% or pretty much all other lasers don't have that. I'm just saying that the Roly does have it, and it's awesome. It also has a fixed spot for the rotary, which I don't use a rotary, but for people who do, knowing for the laser to know exactly where that rotary is without you having to do anything is huge. So if you are planning to use a rotary, I think that is helpful. Of course, I would do lots more research, watching other videos on the rotary for both of these machines before you would make a decision. Again, I'm not a rotary person, so I don't want to be your final decision there. I did mention before the price. I think obviously the price is less for the Roly LaserMatic, and it is a brilliant, brilliant machine. And on that, I already mentioned the customer service. I mean, you're going to have way more users of the xTool, like in the Facebook community, but you're going to get much more personalized service with the Roly LaserMatic. And so that's just kind of the difference. I think you get what I mean. Both are great. It's just different. It depends what you want to support. I love the fact that I'm dealing directly with the owner with Roly LaserMatic. It's so kind of unusual these days, especially a person who just loves lasers like I do. But the chances of like hundreds of people having whatever issue you have with the xTool, that's probably pretty likely, and that you're going to find an answer for whatever it is. The last thing I wrote down here as far as the positives is just business, right? If you're somebody who it just seems so easy for me to work in Lightburn, open, throw in my project, make it, switch something, and go back to making with the Roly LaserMatic for my business. And I don't really know how to put that into words of why that's better. It's just kind of the way that it's made. And of course, Lightburn. I'm an Android guy, right? When it comes to that. The negatives, of course, the fan always stays on. I talked about that it's 30 watts and not 40 watts, which is a difference. And the expandability, which both of them are going to have limited expandability because they are all-in-one machines. When you have something maybe like a Tour or an Atom Stack or something like that that's outside of a case, a lot of times you can get expansion. You can make it into a larger size. Well, you're not going to be able to do that because these are all-in-ones, and to be able to change that is very difficult. I tell people, when you buy a CO2 laser, it's more important to think about the size you get than the power, because you can expand the power, but you can't expand the size with the CO2. They're just huge metal cases that you can't expand, but you can buy a bigger laser tube. Well, that's kind of getting the way it is with lasers, with the diode lasers now, where you can get a 40 watt. Maybe soon xTool will come out with a 70 watt or a 60 watt or whatever, and you will just be able to snap that into one of these machines so you can add bigger power. But how are you going to make it bigger? I mean, this is a case. How are you going to make this case bigger? So it's getting to the point where you got to start thinking, okay, you know, what is the size of thing I'm going to make? Because maybe I can upgrade this power at some point. And I'm thinking that's going to be the next step. So my final thoughts on the one I would choose, because I literally do get to choose which one of these lasers I'm going to keep. And I absolutely love them both. I really honestly believe that you cannot go wrong with either one of these lasers. And as I said at the beginning of this whole thing, I feel so lucky that we have this choice and that it's come so far along that you really can start a small business with either one of these lasers. And I think they're wonderful. Because I am a light burn guy and I design and I make a living using light burn, I think I would probably go more towards the Roly. And I gotta say, if there wasn't for the fan always being on, this would be a no-brainer decision for me. Yeah, it gets annoying having to cut the ends of the wood off, but they are coming out with a bigger one, and I would probably go with that. Because I do think having just that little bit bigger size is very, very nice. So I could honestly see great. This is a very tough decision. The more I think about one, the more I think about the other. I think they're both wonderful. I know, just like if we're talking about PlayStation versus Xbox or Apple versus Android, there are going to be people on both sides of the fence here who are going to be in the comments telling you why one is so much better than the other. If you want to buy a machine for your family to sit in, you know, the dining room and use once in a while, I could see why the xTool would probably make more sense for you. It is easier to teach, maybe more safety features, this sort of thing. Whereas if you're only focused on business and this is going to be in your shop and you want to be able to see it from all sides and work in light burn only, I could see how maybe you would pick the Roly LaserMatic, but it's a tough one. So I'm going to leave this one up to you. I can honestly say that I could not make this decision for everybody. And neither of these machines might be best for some people, right? I mean, these are not cheap. So there are links below for the S1 as I'm making this for xTool. But I did not allow that to be to influence me either way in this. And I told xTool that you know, and I mentioned that to xTool. I said, I'm just going to tell it like it is. And they were okay with that. So thank you. I appreciate that. There aren't a lot of companies that would be willing to do that. I am striving to have a very honest channel here and be try not to be influenced by the companies themselves, which I agree is difficult. And I don't fault channels for, having to deal with that. But so I'm really, really interested in what you have to say down below. Please leave a comment and please be respectful. You know, just because you're a fan of xTool or you're a fan of Roly LaserMatic, it doesn't mean you need to be nasty or mean. Let's just be, again, we're lucky to have these sort of choices and respect each other. And links below and everything for the machines, and like, subscribe, and all that kind of thing. And I will see you in the next one. Love y'all.